That's really a story. I was going to ask him that story about 9/11 later, but he covered it so dramatically. I can't imagine having control of 4,000 something airplanes and immediately having them grounded. It's just a dramatic story. And he's really an American hero just for being the Secretary of Transportation during that period of time. And I understand that you're a native of San Jose. So can you tell us a little bit about Silicon Valley before it was Silicon Valley?
Well, one of the seminal moments in my life is when I chose very carefully the family that I was born into. Great father, great mother, both immigrants from Japan, 3 older sisters, an older brother, and me, the youngest of the 5 children. Raised here in Japantown, here in San Jose, and it was an ordinary life before the World War II. And on December 7th, we came home from church, and the radio was talking about the attack on Pearl Harbor. People were calling the house, wondering what's the impact on all of us of what's happening at Pearl Harbor. We had a next door neighbor who was the executive secretary of the Japanese Association, which was a social organization. We had a hedge between our home, and down below we had a cutout where Gordon or Joyce Hirano or I would be able to go back and forth through that hedge cut. Joyce came running in our house about 1:30, running through the house yelling, "Police are taking Papa away, police are taking Papa away." So my dad ran out the front door to go next door, but Mr. Hirano was already gone. No one knew who came to pick him up, where he was. And so my dad called the city manager, said, "You know, what's going on?" He said, "I don't know, but why don't you call the chief of police?" So he called the chief of police, Black. He said, "Mr. Bennett, I don't know anything about it, but why don't you call Sheriff Bill Emmett?" So he called Sheriff Emmett, and Sheriff Emmett said, "Well, I know what's going on, but it's not my operation, it's the FBI. I'll have the FBI agent call you." Well, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the FBI agent came to the house to explain to my dad what was going on. And he said, "We're picking up people who are sympathetic to the government of Japan and people who are closely related to things Japanese and community leaders." Well, my dad thought, "I'm a community leader, why aren't they arresting me?" But luckily they didn't. And in fact, as a result of that visit, he and my mother packed a suitcase for him just in case they came back. But they never did. But it was an really an ordinary life growing up in San Jose before the war. And then after Pearl Harbor, with all this tension about Japan, and people couldn't make the distinction between those pilots who were in those airplanes and people who looked like them, who lived in Washington, Oregon, California. And there was this drumbeat going on about getting the Japanese out of the West Coast. There was a commanding general of the Western Civil Defense Command who figured if they can attack Hawaii, they can attack the West Coast. And what do I do with the 120,000 people? And on February 17, 1942, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. And that delegated to General DeWitt, the commanding general of the Western Civil Defense Command, the ability to evacuate persons. Didn't say Germans, didn't say Italians, didn't say Japanese, just said persons. Well, General DeWitt then took it upon himself, again, thinking about the attack, Pearl Harbor, what am I going to do with the 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry. So he commandeered racetracks, county fairgrounds. And using Executive Order 9066, we were all forcibly removed from our homes into the racetracks and county fairgrounds because they had built-in living quarters, namely the horse stables. So here, all of a sudden, 120,000 people forcibly removed from their homes. And all they could take was what they could carry. And one of my saddest moments then was I had to give away my dog. And he was a terrier. I loved peanut butter. So the dog's name was Skippy. And I had to give Skippy away. But that was a bad day in Black Rock. So on May 29, 1942, is when we were being evacuated from San Jose. And in order to notify all of us, these big placards went up and said, "Attention, all those of Japanese ancestry, alien and non-alien." As a 10-year-old kid, I read that sign going, who's a non-alien of the United States? It's a citizen. Now, my own government wasn't willing to acknowledge us as citizens. We were non-aliens of the United States of America. Now, I don't know when the last time was that you stood up, beat your chest, and said, "I am a proud non-alien of the United States of America." And that's why I cherish the word citizen, because my own government wasn't willing to use that word in describing me and all of us who were Japanese ancestry, born in the United States. So we were evacuated on May 29, 1942. I was wearing my Cub Scout uniform, baseball glove, baseball bat. And as I got on the train, the MPs confiscated my bat because it could be used as a lethal weapon. So I went running and crying to my father, saying, "The MPs took my bat away." He said, "That's all right, we'll get another bat sometime." So fast forward to 1991. I had written the legislation called Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, ISTEA. It came to be known as ICE-T. And it was the first rewrite of the National Defense Highway Act that President Eisenhower signed in 1956. And it became landmark legislation. So I was honored by the American Society of Civil Engineers by being awarded the title of Fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And a guy in LA read about my story in the ASC magazine, including my losing the bat. And he said, "I want you to have a bat for my collection." So I opened this long box, and it's a Louisville Slugger, signed by Hank Aaron, U.S. Home Run King, and Sadaharu, the Home Run King of Japan. I go, wow, and I write this letter profusely, thanking this person for this wonderful gift. A reporter from the San American News heard about the bat, wrote a story about it. Being an enterprising reporter, he went to a sports store, found out the bat was worth $1,500. But the gift limitation for a member of Congress was $250. So I had to pack up the bat and send it back to this guy, saying I can't accept it, and explaining why. And I sent a copy of that letter to the reporter, and I wrote on there, "Damn government's taking my bat again." 1995, I retired from Congress after 21 years, and he wrote a letter saying, "Congratulations on your retirement. That law doesn't apply to you anymore. Here's the bat."
You know, the incarcerated